Uh, Here we are. So hello, everybody. My name is Dario. I'm the host of the Kubernetes Multitenancy meetup group. And today we got here Sander. I don't want to butcher your surname. I'm sorry. Rodenhuis, right?
Well, something like that.
Try to say that properly so I can repeat that.
Rodenhuis.
Rodenhuis. Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, I can say that. Anyway, just a brief overview of what is our community. So we are a group of developers, sysadmin, DevOps, site-rabbit engineering. Enter your preferred buzzword to describe your job. And we are focusing on multi-tenancy in Kubernetes. You know, Kubernetes is the new thing because it allows us to run distributed systems. And with multi-tenancy, you can achieve really good benefits because you can share a cluster or you can have multiple clusters using a single pane of glass. There are so many shades of multi-tenancy. So the aim of this group is to talk with the community to try to understand the best practices and to discover also open source projects. And today is really cool because we got Sander from Red Kubes and is going to provide us a demo in regards to multi-tenancy in OTOMI. Maybe Sander, I don't know, I'm pretty sure you're going to explain what is OTOMI, but if you want, you can provide a brief overview of what you're doing at Red Kubes, your background, and maybe a brief overview of what is OTOMI.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Sander Rodenhuis, and I'm the founder and current CTO of Red Kubes. And we started Red Kubes, I think, in 2019 already. And before that, I was doing a lot of freelance gigs in cloud native, cloud, private cloud, infrastructure, working in IT starting from 1995. So I look quite young. Maybe I didn't shave my gray beard. But a pretty long time. And well, short background on why we started, because I was working freelance, put my hands on Kubernetes for a couple of years. I started working extensively with Kubernetes. First, building up Kubernetes clusters myself, and then came managed Kubernetes services in AWS, Azure. But going higher up in the stack, so on top of Kubernetes, building platforms, because Kubernetes is a platform for building platforms. I usually say Kubernetes is like a multi-node cluster kernel. It's not an operating system. You need to build that operating system yourself. So spent a lot of time on doing that. And then I thought, I tried to explain it in a nutshell. I thought, this is crazy, right? So why is everybody trying to reinvent the wheel? Why not just pick what we have now? And in the vision of Linux, say, okay, there's a kernel, it's called Kubernetes, and we'll provide like a Kubernetes independent distribution of a Kubernetes-based operating system. So everything you need on top of Kubernetes for developers to build and run their applications. And that's what we did. And we tried to do it according to like the Linux distribution principles. Yeah, so one install, a user interface with access to pre-installed, pre-configured, integrated applications that work just out of the box. But of course, you can still dive into the details and configure everything how you want to do it. But it provides like best practices, everything integrated, out of the box, working in like 10 minutes. And I'm going to show it. Well, I'm not going to show how to install it because I already did. Focus now is more on the multi-tenancy features. But yeah, that's the short background.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sander. Also, a quick reminder, everybody has the chance to open their own microphone. Keep in mind that if you have any question, you can write that on the chat and I'll forward like a reverse proxy to Sander. And we are going to have finally a 5 minutes for open microphone and question and answers. And please remember that KubeCon is approaching. Sander will be there. I also with CLASTIX, so we can share our booth number and looking forward to meeting you there. So Sander, if you want, start sharing your screen so we can see the magics behind OTOMI.
Yeah, I will. Okay, I prepared a couple of slides, just a couple of slides, because I don't want to do too much like pitching product or whatever. I'm just going to, as soon as possible, dive into the whole multi-tenancy and to like a live demo. But short agenda, so I'll explain a little bit about OTOMI and then diving into the multi-tenancy in OTOMI and then to the live demo. Well, I already did a short introduction. So on OTOMI, OTOMI is like, well, all the tools you'll see here bundled in a single suite. So it's a single install. It's one chart, so you can install it with a chart. And so all the integrated applications, they have their own configuration items, right? So they're all charts or operators, and they have their own values. So in total, it's like 10,000s of values. And so what we did is we created a single schema that operates on all of these values. But then we created multiple abstractions, so we can, with a single value, configure multiple applications. So it's one schema to rule them all. But there is, of course, like the question always, how does it work? Yeah? So how do the internals, how have the internals been set up? So it's all chart-based, well, not all different kind of charts. They're all pre-configured, integrated, optimized, policy compliant, and they're all generated through Helm file. So that's like the Helm of Helm. And there's well, you can take a look at the OTOMI core repository, because there you can see the complete structure. And what it does is that you can operate on the configuration through the chart. So you can configure everything in a single chart, including all the applications, teams, and also the multi-tenancy configuration. Or you can do it using our UI. And the UI is like a multi-user Git interface. So what it does, it generates configuration based on the schema and then commits it to Git, and that automatically triggers a pipeline to synchronize the new desired state. So in summary, in OTOMI, there's like everything a developer needs to build and host apps on Kubernetes, and I'm going to show you in a couple of minutes. So let's dive into the multi-tenancy, because the multi-tenancy regarding to Capsule, it's so the multi-tenancy in OTOMI is like a completely different approach. So I won't like go into details on the differences, because a tenant that's called a team in OTOMI is like a Helm chart, a very extensive Helm chart that generates all the resources for the teams. And then there's the automation part, where automation tasks kick in when the configuration changes. So when I create like a new tenant, the automation jobs kick in, and they will automatically do all kinds of automation to onboard teams. So in short, the multi-tenancy in OTOMI, what it does is, I'm going shortly over the features. So when multi-tenancy is enabled in OTOMI, then when you create a tenant, it's called a team, it will then provide the tenant with a private Prometheus instance that can be used for custom metrics, so metrics that should not be shared between tenants. All the general metrics, so from pods and stuff, are shared between the central Prometheus on the platform. Each team will also get like its own Grafana instance, and that is configured with authentication so that only team members are allowed to get access to the team's Grafana instance. And using the Grafana authentication, there's also log or logging segregation, so splitting logs between teams, so teams cannot see each other's logs. Then, and this is part of the automation. So when I create a tenant, the automation will automatically then see, hey, there's a new tenant. Then I will onboard that tenant in Harbor and create a project in Harbor, so and configure the OIDC, so the team members can directly log into Harbor and push images and create their private registries. When Vault is enabled, it will do the same for Vault. So it will create a space in Vault on the shared vault where teams can manage their own secrets. And when Argo is enabled, it allows teams to, using the self-service, to generate ArgoCD applications.
Sander, you told me that you would like to get questions. So I got the first question and I'll try to be really, really short. I guess that all the, between inverted commas, opinionated approach here with multi-tenancy and the tools is from the direct feedback of your customers or based on your experience so far. Also selecting, for example, ArgoCD rather than FlagCD for the CI/CD.
Yeah, very good question. Indeed, this is a relatively opinionated approach. But I'm going to show you in the demo that you can still use everything or make your own decisions. So you can make decisions on what tools or applications you want to use. So you can activate them. You don't need to use them. So in the basis, but now we're diving more into the whole concept of OTOMI, is that the core of OTOMI is a really advanced Ingress architecture using Istio and Nginx Ingress and Keycloak and OAuth 2. And everything else is optional, so you can turn it on if you want. But indeed, so we started based on our own experiences. And of course, we have a lot of users now, and we get a lot of feedback. And based on feedback and feature request, we're adjusting the setup and optimizing and adding even more applications, more choices. But indeed, it's like, it's opinionated. But there's yeah, that's always like what's called in English, a trade-off, right? Because trying to build this yourself is going to be like really intensive. We've been working on this for 4 years already, so you can imagine there's a lot of effort put in to create this. Creating something similar yourself, then that's going to take a huge investment. So indeed, you can choose between, I'm going to get like everything working and decided, well, not completely, but a lot of decisions made for you, or you can dive into the rabbit hole and do the day 0, day 1, and day 2 yourself. Does it answer your question?
Absolutely, thanks.
So I'll quickly continue on the other multi-tenancy features, because you can also configure alert receivers per team. When you create self-service or services using the self-service, it will create like a black box exporter, monitor the availability of your service, generate an alert for your team services. It has provides out-of-the-box dashboards, also depending on the apps enabled. So in my demo, I enabled like Falco, for instance. Then the team will see any event monitored by Falco relating to the workloads within the tenant. There is complete network isolation out of the box with self-service also to allow like services from other tenants access to your services. Harbor pull secrets and push secrets are created. You can immediately download the Docker config for your private registries. And of course, there's the self-service, which I will also demonstrate. So self-service for regular tasks like configuring Ingress for services. And not only the Ingress, but also the whole Istio configuration. So there's a self-service to create an Ingress to publicly expose like your application. And then the automation will generate or create the virtual services, configure the gateways, and do everything below the hood for you, completely automatic. And well, you can also create secrets to automatically sync your secrets from Vault into Kubernetes. This is like a short picture on multiple teams and what is done within the teams. So the private Prometheus instance, private Grafana instance, this is all generated by OTOMI when I create a team, so a tenant. And then there's like the shared applications like Vault, Harbor, Loki, ArgoCD, but also Keycloak, because when I add or create a new tenant, the group and role membership for members of the tenant is also automatically created within Keycloak. But you can also use an external IDP. Then there are like multiple ways on creating the tenants that can be done within the chart. So you can do everything in OTOMI and configure everything in OTOMI through a single chart, including the tenant team configuration. So in this example, you see the team config with a single team called my team, and it's not a complete configuration. But it just shows, hey, network policies for egress and ingress are turned on. And there's even like a service. So I can generate this tenant, and it will then also automatically create and deploy the workload configured in OTOMI, and also create the ingress. So configure the Istio virtual services and anything. So up to secrets, DNS registration. Or you can do it using the self-service feature in the console. So let's go into make our hands dirty. I hope everything works. I set this up this morning. What I'm doing now is I'm logging into the console. Aha, it already starts. Okay.
Famous last words.
This is the console, so the web UI. It also runs in Kubernetes, because everything we do in OTOMI runs natively on Kubernetes. And you can install OTOMI without external dependencies like DNS or certificates or OIDC. But of course, it's much easier to also configure DNS, which I did here with staging certs. But I'm not going to dive into the whole setup. I'm just going to dive into the multi-tenancy part. So here you can see on the top, I can select my context. There's already a team. I created a team called Titan, but I'm now going to first create a new team after I explained what you're seeing here, because here you're seeing a lot of applications, and this on the top, you see the disabled apps. I can activate them by dragging and dropping. I'm not going to do that now. Also, this interface is going to be replaced in like a week or so, and then it's going to look like really amazing. So this is still the old version. And you can see here that I enabled a couple of apps. So I enabled Argo, I enabled Harbor, and just by dragging and dropping, and here you can see the configuration item for like Harbor. And here you can also see what is configured for Harbor by default. So it's using file storage, but I can also use AWS storage to store my images. I can configure backup of the registry database. I can adjust resources of all the Harbor parts. So that can be done by OTOMI. So I enabled Argo, Harbor, Grafana, and Loki. And what I did is in OTOMI itself, I turned on multi-tenancy. And based on this flag, it will now, when I create a team, create the teams in the multi-tenant setup. If I would not enable multi-tenant mode, then teams will just share everything and can see each other. So then there's only like the admin view. So when you log in as a team member, you can see also logs of other teams. I can create a team. I'll call a team, I had a moon name, a Titan. So I know this is also a moon name. I can provide a name for the team. So the team is a tenant, right? And it also has like its own namespace, and this will all be generated by OTOMI. Alert Manager is disabled, so I cannot configure alerts or notification receivers. You can adjust resource quota for this team. Because I'm running on Azure, it has the option to turn on the Azure monitor, so you can use metrics of other Azure services in your dashboards. I'm not going to do that here. And it says private team monitoring is enabled. So also in multi-tenant mode, I can disable the private team monitoring, and then the teams will not get, or this team specifically will not get its own Prometheus instance and Grafana instance. So that saves resources. So maybe for like a proof of concept or for playing around, you don't need the Prometheus and Grafana instance within the team. You can just turn it off. I can say if network policies and egress control are enabled for the team, and these are the self-service flags. So I can, as an admin, can allow team members to adjust or say, hey, you're allowed to change. No, this is what the team is allowed to do. So by default, it says team can configure ingress and they can configure network policy. I can also turn this off, and then a team cannot configure network policy. Or I can say, hey, you're allowed to change OIDC. When OIDC would be enabled, when I create a team, it's not enabled. Otherwise, I would see like a group ID that I can add. And when I say that then for OIDC, the self-service, they can change the group ID of their team.
Quick question, Sander. Are these RBAC rules bound to the Kubernetes one? So there is a mapping one-to-one, or is something that is living in OTOMI?
No, this is in OTOMI.
Okay.
So each team will have like a, because for the teams, there's the chart, and it has like a configured Kubernetes RBAC for the team. And all the things you see here are based on membership on the teams, and it's all configured in OTOMI.
Thanks.
Because turning this on, for instance, that will enable a team member to change the resource quota within the team, also using the UI. And changing that will then generate the resource quota on Kubernetes.
Makes sense.
I'll just say, hey, they can download the kube config and download the Docker config, and I'll just say submit. So what's going to happen now is I need to say deploy changes. And now the API, still scheduling. It will say, So what happened in the back is that API, the OTOMI API, so the API behind the console, now generated for the new team, Dion. This is an empty file for the workloads configuration and for the services, and also the teams configuration. So here you will see the teams, and here is the configuration for the new Diona team. And you can see here that I said they're enabled to download the kube config and the Docker config. Now there's also secrets settings for the teams. So here you will see that because each secret or each team or tenant also has like a password, and that's encrypted here in the values, and that password is used for the authentication for the tenant. So all the values in the OTOMI schema that have are tagged as a secret are here by default encrypted in the values. And this will now run the pipeline with the testing and then apply the new changes onto the cluster. But API already knows the new team, So I can switch to the new team. And there you will see that the team has access to these applications. So I'm going to switch now because I created already, or let's wait until like this is finished, because then you can see also that it works, because I could switch to another team, because now there's a new team created. And I can now, as an admin, because I'm not using an external IDP. So if I would use like Azure AD, yeah, I could add a group ID to the team and they can automatically sign in. But in this case, I'm using Keycloak as an IDP. So I need to create, hey, lights turn off here. I need to add users or create users and add them to the team here. So this is a different kind of setup. And as you can see here, I can now, as an admin, log in. And I can create a user. You can see I already created a user for another team. I can here now say test. Well, I call it user 1, easy. The team is not created yet, so I needed to wait because onboarding a team just takes a couple of minutes until this is done. And of course, here you can also see what's happening in the back. Because after the team is created, an automation task will then make sure that also the team is created, or the group is created in Keycloak, which it still has not. There it is. So now there's the team Diona, and I can save it and set the credentials. And sign out here. There's a nasty zoom thing in my screen. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. I'll sign out here. And I can also quit this one. See here, it's done. So I'm going to switch now, and I'm going to sign out and sign in as user 1, I think it was. And now I'm logged in as a member of the tenant. And so let's see what has been done for the new tenant. So when I go to ArgoCD, you will see that there's already a default Argo application created. It's listening to a special repository that's also created for the team. You don't need to use it, but it's very easy because now you can just drop a couple of manifests in the repository and deploy your application. And when we go to Harbor, I now need to first time say who I am. And you can see that I now have access to Harbor only for the team Diona, not for other teams. So not for other tenants. I can only see all the stuff within my project. And well, same for Loki. If I want to go to Loki, first time it never works pretty. You can see I can now see logs for my namespace, Team Diona. But if I would change this into this is not very smooth, huh? Because there's also a tenant called Titan. I'm not getting access. And I can go to Vault. And get access to my team Dione space involved. I'm gonna sign out here because I already had another team, which I will sign in here, and my user there is Sander. So what I can do now as a team member is I can create a workload. I already created a workload here, and I'll create a new one. And I think what would be nice to do is, oh yeah, this is always a nice one for demos. And what I'm doing now is I'm creating a workload that will create an application set in ArgoCD and then deploy my application. I'm using the repository OTOMI charts that contains a couple of like generic charts, and I'll choose the deployment. Next step in OTOMI will be that we're going to provide a form where you can fill in the required values of your workload that then will saved also in the OTOMI configuration for the values, and then deploy your workload. So I'll submit this, and then I can edit the values. I already got it here. This is like a mini Visual Studio, and I'll say submit, and then deploy my changes. So what it will do now is create an application set for my team and in Argo, and deploy this Super Mario image as a deployment. We can now go to Argo, and I'm still, that's happens when you log in with multiple users. Oh yeah, I'm working in the Team Titan. So this is the Team Titan, the default Argo application, and this is now the new, no, this is the, sorry, I'm getting confused here. It's the Hello World workload, which I already created. So in a couple of seconds, the new workload will pop up when it is created. I can also sign in into Gitty, and here you will see that there's a Git repository created by OTOMI for the Team Titan, where I can drop in manifest that will then be automatically synced using the default Argo application. Let's see, still not there. It always takes a couple of minutes to provision everything. And that's not nice during a demo, because you don't want like a quiet space in between. Ah, there it is. The Super Mario, and that's now being deployed. Oh, you can also see that there's a config audit report, because on the, as a platform admin, I enabled the Triffy operator. I'm going to show in a couple of minutes, so it will already like scan everything deployed within the team for the tenant. And you can also see that there's a service called Super Mario. So what I'm going to do now is, this is also self-service feature. I can say there is a service called Super Mario. This is still the old interface, because in the new one, you can just select the service. It will automatically detect all the services within the team. And you don't need to say if it's an existing Kubernetes service, because it will already know. And then I can say, hey, I'm going to configure ingress. here you can see that there's, in this case, there's only one Ingress class. There can be multiple. So an admin can create multiple Ingress classes and connect to different networks. So like in a private network or a public network. And here the team or the tenant can say, hey, I want to expose my service on this controller. I'll just use the defaults, which you can see here. So it'll create a host name by default using the team name. Yeah, there's a lot of other options. Here I can specify network policies, so I can allow other teams to access this service, but I'm just going to say deny all, and then I'm going to say submit. And this will now configure everything to expose this new workload publicly on this URL. And of course, there's also going to take a couple of minutes. So in the meantime, what I can show is that, as I said, so Triffy operator is enabled, Falco is enabled. So in the team dashboards, which are also automatically configured. So when the admin says, I'm going to enable like a Triffy operator, you will automatically get the container scan results dashboard. Or I can, because gatekeeper is also enabled, so I can see all the policy violations. And what else? I can also here, Falco. So Falco detected a couple of threats in the Team Titan. So all the information about the workloads within the tenant, based on the applications enabled by the admin, are provided. Oh yeah, I'm logged in as a team member, so I cannot show the change in the platform configuration, because now it does. It also has configured the surface for my team, and when that is done, and I don't know for sure if that's already the case, but then no, it's not ready yet because DNS is not created yet. So here you will get the URL, but in the meantime, what I can show is that also on Prometheus, we can see within the team, oh, it's not added yet. You can see here the Hello World example. So when I create a service in OTOMI as a tenant, then OTOMI will also configure a black box exporter to monitor that service. So the new one will also be there in a couple of seconds. It's already there, still on status unknown, but here you can see Super Mario is already added. And of course, in the team configuration, build is successful. You can see the settings that the team member cannot change anything here, because that can only be done by the admin. I can only, well, I cannot change anything on the configuration because that was not allowed. But I can download like the Docker config. So I can download the Docker config, and then I have the credentials to push images to my private registry for the team. Hey, and it runs. I don't know how to play it.
Super Mario on Kubernetes.
Is the link public?
Sorry?
Is the link public?
Yeah, the link is public. So
share in the chat, Sander, so we can play with that.
We can DDoS it.
Let's see if that works. So I shared it.
Yeah, the staging CA is used. This is what I can say.
Yeah, in the console you can also download the CA, but so that was like a very quick overview of how the multi-tenancy works within OTOMI and using the self-service. So onboarding a new tenant, a team, and all the features they will get, and the self-service options. And of course, teams can also get access to a Gitty. So an admin can also create like a private organization for the tenant. Then you can even push your code into Gitty. You can use the drone to build images, push them to Harbor. Of course, you can also use your own pipeline. And we're working on more features, so also like on a build pack where you can just say, hey, this is my repository, and it will then build the image and push it into your private Harbor registry. So any questions? Because it's been awfully quiet.
I got a question, and I try to warm up the group. And the question is, what's the reason behind the name OTOMI or OTOMI?
That's a good question. I didn't came up with the name because one of Maurice, he's been working on like the first version of OTOMI in 2016 already. I don't know. And I think the name came out of a little bit out of autonomous, you know, so because the whole principle behind OTOMI is that you can deploy it on any Kubernetes cluster. So we have support for AWS, Google, what else? AWS, DigitalOcean. You can just run it almost anywhere. I can run it on Minikube on my laptop. And it has, and that's also why we called it a self-hosted PaaS, because it has like everything you would need to build and run applications securely on Kubernetes without any dependencies. So we have like a customer who's doing medical, using medical data, running a Kubernetes cluster environment in a private data center. And they don't use any cloud servers. So they run everything on the platform, from Git repositories to build pipelines to everything, completely independent. And it is also independent on, because that's like a huge frustration of me, because Kubernetes is becoming like a milk cow, yeah, for the big hyperscalers. You want to use Kubernetes? Okay, then you get like a managed vanilla Kubernetes servers, and they're offering you all kinds of ways to just consume as much other services as possible. And of course, those services need to be paid. And what we're doing is saying, no, we don't want to be dependent on that lock-in, because what you can do with OTOMI, and I showed it here. So these values I can export, so I can set up a complete platform setup with all the tenants, with all the services, with specific configuration for applications, and export it into a single values file, and then deploy the whole setup to another cluster on a different cloud. So I can do like a migration from Azure to AWS within an hour, except for the data, of course. But everything else, so all the teams, all the services, all the workloads, the configuration of the applications, because here, like for instance, on Istio, you can see, you can do all the adjusting the configuration here, but these are the values provided by our schema, and that can also be like adjusted through the API or through the chart. But we also have what we call raw values. So the raw values are the like original values of the underlying chart. So that means you can do a lot of customization, and the raw values are also stored into the repository. And they can also be deployed using the chart. So then here it will say somewhere raw values, and you can do the modifications or your customization on the configuration of specific applications within the single values file.
That's great, Sander. My bad, because I was playing Super Mario and I lost my focus. No, just joking, just joking.
Oh.
We got 2 questions, and I'll go with the first one by Marco. Is there any way to easily integrate other Git servers like GitLab?
Yeah, good question, because we want to be not depending on specific services. So here you can see, so let me explain. You can configure everything through the chart. So you can have, we have like a customer who has multiple clusters with a single pipeline with parameters for specific configurations, and everything is done through the pipeline. So creating the teams, services, workloads, everything. And in that case, drone can be disabled. So you cannot operate locally through the UI and generate and change configurations. That is all done within a pipeline. But you can also run, of course, and use Gitty. That's by default. But if you say, hey, I want to use like a different Git repository or source control, you can. So you can use like an external Gitty. You can use GitHub, GitLab. That can all be configured.
Nice, nice. And we got another question, and I tried to answer that because is it production ready? And I say it seems so, because in the end, Red Kubes is the commercial company behind OTOMI. And Valid is saying, I'm sorry if I butcher your name, I'm interested with this enterprise container platform, and can we compare it to Backstage? Nice question.
Backstage, no. Because I think I never worked with Backstage, but Backstage is more like a pluggable, like self-service environment, right? And here, everything and all the automation is already created. I don't know if I'm explaining that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say that Backstage in the end is a sort of software development kit and an SDK to build a platform.
Yeah, but you need to provide your own content.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
If you say, hey, I want to provide like multiple development teams with a way to create workloads or configure services, you first need to create that content. And then it is still like a template, because they still need to adjust it to their specific environment. And what we do here is we, because of the higher abstraction, we generate the configuration, and through the API and through the schema, it is always, there are no errors. Everything is controlled. So you cannot make any mistakes unless you
battle tested also by Red Kubes, I'd say.
Yes. So we have like, and that's the most difficult part for us, because we support multiple clouds. We do a lot of integrations. We have support for multiple versions. So each night we run multiple automated integration tests, trying and testing everything. And yeah, we can talk on this topic for hours, but like the whole Kubernetes lifecycle is going so fast, and all the other projects are running behind it. So if you're running on Kubernetes 1.24 and you also use Istio, well, then you have a challenge, because like 1.23 is already like out of support this month. So you need to do an upgrade. You need to upgrade Istio. And Istio in OTOMI is integrated into Harbor, into all kinds of other stuff. So that means that we not only need to do the upgrade of Istio in this case, but we also need to test all the integrations. And that's a lot of work. So we're always running behind. But we're taking away that lifecycle management on all of these integrated applications for you, because OTOMI just has one version. So here you can see that I'm running on latest 20.0. And in a couple of weeks, or I think even next week, we'll have a new version that has the new UI. And by the end of the month, we'll have 0.21 with also support for Kubernetes version 1.25 and 1.26, because we need to do the upgrade of Istio, Knative, because I haven't even showed half of what you can do with the platform, because I can also enable Knative, and it all works out of the box. I can just say, create a Knative service, and it's exposed, and gateways, and everything is configured for you.
Yeah, Sander, maybe we can have also another session because we are running out of time and we still have 2 questions. The first one from Giuseppe that is asking, what if I need to create cloud resources as part of my workload? Example, generic cloud managed DB. Do I need to provision it as OTOMI, or there is also integration with, for example, Crossplane?
No, what you can do, it's also another topic. So I don't know if you've seen it, but there's also a team admin. And because if you deploy a workload as a regular tenant, you're bound to the RBAC limitations of the namespace of the team. And as an admin, I can deploy workloads. Here you can already see, hey, now there's a namespace. So I can deploy workloads in any namespace. And so I could now create a namespace called Crossplane and deploy the Crossplane chart here, and then it is deployed by OTOMI. But what OTOMI does not do is it does not provision any external cloud services, because this is Kubernetes native. If you want to run a database on a cloud database or managed database service, you need to provision that yourself. We don't do any cloud stuff because that is only bringing headaches.
Yeah. And finally, we got also a question from Andy, and he's saying, I'm a master's student and through a suggestion that multi-tenancy in Kubernetes with focus on security will be a good thing to look at. I ended up doing my dissertation on achieving multi-tenancy in Kubernetes. Welcome, bro. Is there any particular standard do you have used to test security, example generic isolation of teams, tenants? I'm sorry if this is a silly question. This is all very new to me. And first thing I would like to say, no worries at all, because this group is for seasoned experts, but also for newcomers. And our focus is to talk about multi-tenancy, because in the end, multi-tenancy is also pretty important with security. And I can say that we had in one of our previous meetings, a discussion in regards to multi-tenancy and security. So Andy, keep in mind that you can reach out using Meetup to me or on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and I can share that with you. And maybe, Sander, would you like to briefly answer to this question? Because otherwise I can do on my own, as you prefer. Yeah.
Security in Kubernetes is also a topic that we can discuss for hours, because it is there's so much related to security. So I'll try and keep it brief, because what we try to do is implement like all the required controls. So we have customers also in government here in the Netherlands, who have like ISO regulations, so they need to show that they're compliant to ISO 27001, for instance, and that involves a lot of controls on what is it, on network security, encryption, and everything we try to implement in OTOMI. That's also the reason why in the core we're using Istio, because we want to have like a mutual TLS from the client until the pod. That's what we do with Istio. But of course, we also have the network policies for the tenants, and network policies in a multi-tenant environment is hell, because especially when you're using like shared services and all kinds of other like integrations, because you need to specify all of these policies. And if you want to allow teams to create policies themselves, they're still like facing challenges, because that's already like so advanced stuff. I haven't seen a lot of companies really implementing network policies on this level. And then, yeah, there's, of course, your containers, your images, so checks on the front door, on the specs of your workloads. So that's where we're using Gatekeeper on API level. We use Harbor with Trivy to scan images. When they come in, we use Trivy, or we can also use what's it called? KubeClarity, to use like a different scanner and scan running containers. Then there's like Falco for threat detection within your containers. There's so many topics that security on Kubernetes is very difficult, and I haven't seen a really like an example of a company who implemented all of this stuff. And this...
We can talk about that, but unfortunately we run out of time, Sander. So just a brief reminder, it was really pleasant getting this introduction in regards to OTOMI and multi-tenancy. Keep in mind that KubeCon is approaching, and Sander will be there, I'm pretty sure, because Red Kubes is sponsoring the KubeCon. As well, you can meet me and Marcello from CLASTIX. We got our booth. So Sander, do you remember your booth number?
My booth number, I think it is called, let me check. One second.
Yeah, don't worry. In the meanwhile, I'll share my our booth number, so you can meet CLASTIX team, that we are the company behind Capsule and Kamaji, SU23. And instead, Sander, do you have your booth number?
Yeah, I got it, but I forgot it already.
Marketing department is going to complain about that.
SU17, so we're not that far away from each other.
Yeah, well, we are going to meet there. So thanks a lot to all the people attending this meeting. Keep in mind that we are going to upload that on YouTube for CLASTIX Lab YouTube channel. And if you have any question, please reach out to Sander on LinkedIn, on Twitter, or on the OTOMI.io website. And looking forward to meeting you, all the community, not tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow, on Thursday.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye, cheers.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers.